Coming up on Network Africa. Mali's army says 15 soldiers killed in coordinated attacks in southwest of the country. French President Emmanuel Macron arrives in Guinea-Bissau. Plus, the United Nations says it's exercised restraint in DRC protests. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shibuale. We begin in West Africa, where Mali's army says 15 soldiers and 3 civilians have been killed in coordinated attacks in the southwest of the country, where a jihadist insurgency is raging. A statement said the assaults on military camps in Sokolo and near Kalumba were repulsed, with almost 50 militants being killed. But a third attack near Mopti caused no casualties. Mali has seen a decade-long insurgency by militants linked to al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. The country's military authorities have begun churning to Russia for help after rejecting long-standing French support. And French President Emmanuel Macron is in Guinea-Bissau for the first official visit of a French head of state to the country. Macron, who was received at the airport by President Umaru Embalo, aims to strengthen political and security ties. That's amid France's withdrawal of thousands of troops from Mali after decades fighting militants. Visiting Benin Republic on Wednesday, the French president promised more support for West African countries battling an expanding militant threat. Well, let's take a look at the highlights so far from his West African tour.
French President Emmanuel Macron is on a tour of the 3 African countries in a bid to strengthen political and security ties. That's amid France's withdrawal of thousands of troops from Mali after decades fighting militants. Benin, Togo and Ivory Coast have seen increasing attacks by fighters linked to al-Qaeda and Islamic State as violence spreads south from the Sahel region. Speaking during a joint news conference with Benin's President Patrice Talon on Wednesday, President Macron announced that France could deliver drones and more sophisticated weapons to the country to help tackle a worsening Islamic insurgency threat. On his part, President Talon said that Benin was hoping for more because the fight against terrorism has become one of the country's major challenges, which could hurt its economy that's beginning to attract investors. Speaking in Cameroon on Tuesday, President Macron has said that France, as a, quote, friend of Africa, would do everything to prevent Russian influence on the continent from spreading too much. The visit comes as France is redefining its military involvement in the region, but will expand counter-insurgency operations to Gulf of Guinea countries that are now dealing with terrorist groups who are spreading and threatening the whole region. A central pillar of the new strategy is to help the countries strengthen their armies, provide support, and allow them take lead in operations on the ground.
Back here in Nigeria, armed men have attacked a private construction company in Ondo State, injuring 2 persons. According to an eyewitness, the gunmen arrived at the company's premises around 8 p.m. yesterday, detonated the explosives and started shooting sporadically.
The heavy downpour in Owo, Ondo State, did not deter gunmen from evading a private construction company on the night of July the 27th. 2 members of staff were injured, while the damage the assailants left behind is evident within the premises.
This is a great calamity to this our company, so we can never afford it. So we are begging Nigeria to assist us.
We heard of dynamite detonated at the Cranborg Construction Company here, and we were all shocked, and people ran helter-skelter. But God so kind to us, The construction workers, there are very many here. This is their office. There are very many, but they were inside at that time due to the rain.
At the Federal Medical Center, one of the victims narrates his ordeal during the attack, while the other is still in excruciating pain.
Around 8 o'clock, I don't know where the gunshot was coming to my back for Cranball. That is what I was trying to say. I don't know where the people from. I don't know. I saw one person carry AK-14. I don't know what is happening.
This attack comes about 7 weeks after gunmen invaded the St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, killing more than 40 worshippers and injuring many others.
As to politics ahead of the 2023 general elections, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, says the use of technology for voters' registration has been very impressive across all registration centres in Kano State. He made the comment on a visit to the agency in Kano State as part of his nationwide tour of INEC facilities. Professor Yakubu also visited a centre of an ongoing PVC registration and promised credible, free and fair elections in 2023.
The Commission will continue to deepen the use of technology in elections. We have done so much of our activities are now online. We commence the online voter registration, but for fresh registrants, we had to suspend at a point to allow them complete the registration physically at the registration centers. And every week, since we started the exercise in June last year, we have been giving Nigerians regular weekly updates on the total number of persons registered, those that have completed the registration, and we have also attempted a breakdown of the number of registrants by age, by occupation, and will continue to do so. By the time we finalize the national register, we'll then break it down in terms of the various categories of registrants. So in terms of voter registration, we believe we are doing well given the number of Nigerians that have registered. Are we where we would like to be? No, because there are still Nigerians on the queue, and we are determined to serve them. The IRF portal has come to stay, where after elections at the polling units, results are uploaded in real time. So Nigerians now see the results even before election is concluded. And we make a formal announcement of as soon as the process is finished at the polling unit, the result is uploaded on the IRF portal. I will encourage you and those that have not registered on the portal to do so, so that it will be part of this happy experience.
And over in Kenya, the running mate of presidential candidate William Ruto has lost $1.7 million after a court ruled that the money held in 4 accounts at a local bank came from proceeds of corruption. Justice Esther Maina ruled that Rigathi Gachagua received the money from government agencies, but there was no evidence that he had supplied anything. In response on Twitter, Mr. Gachagua said the judgment did not come as a surprise and was meant to undermine his candidature in the coming elections. He also accused the judge of being biased. The lawsuit was initiated by the Assets Recovery Agency, a state body mandated to confiscate proceeds of crime. Kenyans will be electing a new president on August the 9th. Deputy Presidents William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga are the 2 leading candidates. Meanwhile, a Kenyan minister has said that the shortage of 100 and 200 shilling notes at the bank is down to politicians using the cash to bribe voters ahead of next month's elections. Interim Minister Fred Matiang'i also warns that the next parliament could be captured by individuals involved in economic crimes if they are allowed to use dirty money to buy their way to victory. Speaking at a meeting on money laundering and terrorism financing, Dr. Matiang'i said such a move could undermine the war against corruption. He adds that individuals involved in money laundering and dealers in fake cash could influence the country's laws to protect themselves if elected. Kenyan politicians shot down an earlier proposal by the Electoral Commission to cap election spending on election for presidential campaigns at $40 million. The United Nations says it has no evidence so far that its peacekeepers fired at civilians during 3 days of protests against its forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo. 19 people have now been confirmed to have died in the violent clashes in multiple towns that targeted UN camps. 3 UN personnel were among the dead. The mission in DR Congo is the second largest UN peacekeeping force in the world, but as in recent years began withdrawing and reducing its forces in parts of the country.
Demonstrations erupted in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Monday, with people accusing the UN of failing to contain violence by armed groups. The UN Deputy Special Representative in the country, Kassim Diagne, says investigators have already been sent to help the authorities analyze the bullets that killed the civilians in the towns of Goma and Butembo.
We do not have any evidence that MONUSCO troops were firing at civilians, but again, we want to make sure that we do an investigation with the government to determine exactly where the shooting came from.
He says initial findings, however, show that the UN peacekeepers exercised restraint as protesters stormed into their bases and burned vehicles, offices, and looted food stores. The protest had mostly fizzled out on Wednesday in the cities of Goma and Butembo, but had spread to Uvira in South Kivu province, where crowds threw rocks at a MONUSCO compound. 4 protesters were electrocuted in the city when troops fired shots that hit an electric cable which fell on them.
The situation today can be described as normal fragility, if you wish, because with the advocacies we've made with the government since Monday, the Prime Minister, there have been some reinforcement of national security forces on the ground, securing our bases and installations. We've also reinforced troops from our own contingents to ensure that security is restored. And yesterday, we were very pleased last night, although a bit late, that the governor of the North Kivu province issued a strong statement calling for demonstrators to move out of the streets and banning all sorts of demonstrations from the streets. So that was also quite an important development. We do have certain pockets of still, I would call, insecurity, particularly in South Kivu, in Uvira territory in particular.
The UN Security Council has condemned the violence and has also asked the Congolese government to fully investigate and prosecute those involved.
Violence against our peacekeeping mission is continuing to escalate. At the MONUSCO Butembo base today, violent attackers snatched weapons from Congolese police and fired upon our uniformed personnel. Sadly, 1 military peacekeeper and 2 UN police personnel were killed, and another was injured. We add our voice to the acting head of MONUSCO, Kassim Diagne, to condemn the killing of our colleagues and to express our deepest sympathy to their families and colleagues. Mr. Diagne has described the violence against the UN as absolutely unacceptable and counterproductive, given that the mission is in the country to work alongside local authorities, to protect civilians, deter armed groups, and build the capacity of state institutions and services. He called on Congolese authorities, civil society, and community groups to denounce the violence. It is not in chaos and confusion or division that we will make progress towards stability and peace, he said. At least 4 incidents have targeted MONUSCO staff residences, and other staff have now been relocated to camps.
The UN mission, which includes civilians, police, and military personnel, has around 12,400 troops in the country and costs more than $1 billion per year. It has been in the process of gradually withdrawing from the area for several years. MONUSCO took over from an earlier UN operation in Democratic Republic of the Congo in 2010, with the aim of protecting civilians and supporting the government in its stabilization efforts, as clashes between Congo's army and the M23 rebel group have displaced thousands. A faction of the youth wing of President Felix Tshisekedi's UDP's ruling party had earlier called for protest, demanding the immediate withdrawal of the UN peacekeepers over what it described as their ineffectiveness.
Still ahead on the program. South African president calls for equal pay for women footballers. For a moment, please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. In North Africa, Tunisian President Kais Saied says draft decrees will be prepared for the holding of an election for a new parliament and a second chamber for regions. This comes a day after preliminary results of a referendum indicated a controversial constitution was approved, though turnout had been low. In a statement, the president noted the need to prepare a draft decree related to the election of a new parliament and the Council of Regions and Districts. It adds that a draft decree related to the Constitutional Court would be prepared in accordance with provisions of the new constitution. Now, Human Rights Watch says Morocco is imprisoning journalists after flawed trials on non-political charges in order to silence them. The New York-based group said two of the most prominent cases are those of Umar Radi and Suleiman Rassoni, both sentenced this year on sexual abuse charges to at least 5 years in jail. Another journalist, Taufik Boucharain, was jailed in 2018 for 12 years, accused of rape and people trafficking. All three have been critical of the authorities and have denied the charges against them. Morocco has insisted that its justice system is independent and that the cases had nothing to do with the journalists' work. And to health matters, the World Health Organization has confirmed another 2 cases of Marburg virus in Ghana, 2 weeks after the country reported its outbreak of the highly infectious Ebola-like disease. Ghana has officially confirmed on Sunday its first 2 cases of the virus, a highly infectious disease similar to Ebola, after 2 people who later died tested positive for the virus earlier this month. Tests conducted in Ghana came back positive on July 10. The results had to be verified by a lab in Senegal for the cases to be considered confirmed, according to the WHO. This is only the second outbreak of Marburg in West Africa. The first ever case of the virus was detected last year in Guinea, with no further cases identified.
2 additional cases of Marburg in Ghana. First one is the wife of the index case and the child of the index case as well. So this information we received from the country. They have talked about 180 contacts followed up, but we still have additional contacts related to the last cases. There are more than 40. It means that all contacts were not out of the risk period. So the teams are working to investigate to understand better how these people were infected. So the situation is still very difficult because you have 3 regions affected right now. Although the number of cases is not high at the moment, but we need to make sure that every hotspot can be stopped. Otherwise, it will become more complex. So we are working very closely with the country, with partners to make sure that we can stop it as soon as possible. Thank you.
And WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says the monkeypox outbreak can be stopped if the world takes the risk seriously. Speaking to reporters in Geneva, Dr. Ghebreyesus says the best way to stop the virus is to reduce the risk of exposure. More than 18,000 cases have now been reported to WHO from 78 countries, with more than 70% of cases reported from Europe. So far, 5 deaths have been reported and about 10% of monkeypox cases have been hospitalized.
Declared a public health emergency of international concern over the global monkeypox outbreak. More than 18,000 cases of monkeypox have now been reported to WHO from 78 countries, with more than 70% of cases reported from the European region and 25% from the region of the Americas. So far, 5 deaths have been reported, and about 10% of cases are admitted to hospital to manage the pain caused by the disease. This is an outbreak that can be stopped if countries, communities, and individuals inform themselves, take the risks seriously, and take the steps needed to stop transmission and protect vulnerable groups. The best way to do that is to reduce the risk of exposure. There are also challenges with the availability of vaccines. There are about 16 million doses of MVA-BN globally. Most are in bulk form, meaning they will take several months to fill and finish into vials that are ready to use. Several countries with monkeypox cases have secured supplies of the MVA-BN vaccine, and WHO is in contact with other countries to understand their supply needs. WHO urges countries with smallpox vaccines to share them with countries that don't. We must ensure equitable access to vaccines for all individuals and communities affected by monkeypox in all countries, in all regions.
Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is on a tour of African countries and is now in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. He has held meetings with the country's president and foreign minister. Speaking during his visit, Mr. Lavrov criticized the reliance of the global economy on the US dollar. He says the reliance on the American currency in supporting the world economy is not so very promising, and claimed countries were shifting to using alternative currencies more and more. He adds that the globe was living through an important historical period and people who have to choose what type of world they wanted to live in. Lavrov is seeking to convince African leaders and to a much lesser extent ordinary people that Moscow cannot be blamed either for the conflict or the food crisis. Russia has blamed the blockade on Ukrainian mines. Meanwhile, victorious Ethiopian athletes have received a hero's welcome in the capital, Addis Ababa, after their performance at the recent World Athletics Championship, where the country came second on the medals table. Ethiopia finished behind host the US, bagging a total of 10 medals, including 4 golds, a first for the country in the history of the championships. Earlier today, the team was received in Addis Ababa by thousands of cheering supporters. The team also visited the presidential palace, where they met with the president. And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country's women's football team deserve equal pay to the men. He made the call at a ceremony to welcome home the female players who had just won the Women's Africa Cup of Nations after beating Morocco 2-1 at the weekend. It was the first continental title for the team after 5 final defeats. The victory has sparked a public debate around equal pay in the country after it was reported the players would receive less money in prize bonuses than their male colleagues.
Women's Africa Cup of Nations victors, South Africa celebrated their historic win with President Cyril Ramaphosa. The team known as Banyana Banyana were also greeted by hundreds of jubilant fans waving South African flags outside the country's union buildings. President Ramaphosa congratulated the team and also thanked them for representing the country well during the Africa tournament.
You, Banyana Banyana, you promised that you would bring the cup back home. And you have brought it home. Here is the cup. It's not in any other country on the continent. It is here in South Africa, where it belongs.
Banyana Banyana striker Hilda Magai scored twice as the team claimed their first Women's Africa Cup of Nations title by beating host Morocco 2-1 in Saturday's final. Magai's 2 goals came in the space of 8 minutes as she tapped home from close range in the 63rd minute and added a second in the 71st from a similar position.
I feel amazing. I'm excited. I'm more excited for the country, to be honest, because we know that our people are going through a lot, not just load shedding, but it's so amazing to just watch people cheering, being excited, and just wanting us to move forward as a nation, as women's football.
Proud that I was amongst beautiful souls and making history with beautiful souls, you know. My teammates are incredible.
It was South Africa's first title after having finished runners-up 5 times, including the last edition in 2018. The Cup of Nations serves as Africa's qualification event for the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand in 2023.
congratulations to them. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shaboale. Bye for now.